Welcome back. So now we are better understanding the single window interface. We understand that windows will open up. We know that we have the global tracks, which are responsible for BPM changes, signature changes, transposition changes. The local menu bar also helps us navigate the waters. We talked about the various track types in Logic Pro. We can utilize these in any given session to allow us to create audio, software instrument, and or drummer tracks, and we can use various formats. Audio format will fit in with an audio track. A software instrument track can play back MIDI and the pattern format as well. And the drummer is distinctly made for the drummer format, and yet we know that we can convert that into MIDI. So with that being said, when we enter the new tracks dialog window, that's the key command option command N, we do get a set of instructions that can be puzzling. How so? Well, we do get software instrument. We've talked about this. We have an audio track, a drummer track, which we've all mentioned in this slide here, but something that we haven't talked about, external MIDI and guitar or bass. So what's this about? If you do not have an external MIDI drum sequencer or a synthesizer, then this really has no place in your workflow. So I'm just going to go ahead and omit this from the conversation to keep things easy. And so with guitar or bass, what's interesting here is if we select this, we're just simply selecting an audio track with predefined settings that are set up here inside of the library. If I hit option command N, you can see that I am loading the default patch. And so if you want to change a default patch for guitar or bass, let's say this is something that you do to sketch out ideas, you simply go into the library, you set up your channel strip as you would, and then you hit the action gear menu and you define it as your default. And the next time you open up the new tracks dialog window and you insert this default patch, this is what you're going to see. Let me give you another example. I'm going to save Amazing Tweed as my default. And so the default patch for guitar or bass has been selected. And there it is right there, the Amazing Tweed. So what I want to do now, what I thought would be really interesting, is to really show you the building blocks of the program. So right now, if I hit the key command X, let me delete these, you'll see that I have an audio track. You'll see that I have a software instrument track, a drummer, and then another software instrument track that is utilizing the pattern format. We also have two buses in play, 134 and 135. On top of that, we have a stereo output, and then for some reason, there's two masters. There should only be one. So if this ever happens to you, just delete one and you should be all right. So if I delete all this information, what happens? Let's delete everything. Let's start from the ground up. So I'm just going to delete all of this data here. Yes, delete everything. Okay, and I'll select one audio track just so we can look at the session. I will disable any features that I do not want to access. So let's go ahead and create. All right, if I open up the mixer, now things look very simplistic, don't they? One audio track, one stereo out. You can consider this your master. And this one here is your master volume. If I then go back into the new tracks dialog window, this time I'll do it from the main menu bar. I'll go into new tracks. I'll say, please create a software instrument. And we will create that. And so then now you can see that the mixer is populated with an audio track, a software instrument track. Let's do the same with drummer. So the drummer has a unique behavior in that it automatically will populate the tracks area with an 8-bar loop, and that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that really quick so we are looking at the screen in a very clear way. So this is the program. Not that complicated to understand. An audio track type, software instrument track type, and then a drummer track type, which can convert to MIDI. Please orient yourself with this part of the program and understand when it's appropriate to record audio on your own, MIDI on your own, utilize the drummer technology on your own. And then I also want you to be able to access loops. This could be third party as well. I need you to have a good, strong working knowledge of how to use what and when. So we also can drag in loops to create tracks. So an audio loop is obviously going to create an audio track. And of course, if we look at the mixer, that is reflected there. Something else to think about, if I drag in a MIDI loop, we now get a second software instrument track. And of course, if I bring in the pattern loop, all that's going to happen is we're going to start to utilize a software instrument track, as you can see here. Okay, so let me delete all this information once again. We're going to delete anyway. I'm going to delete everything from the tracks area. Yes, please. All right, let's create one audio track. This time I'll open up the mixer and I will open up the inspector, key command I. Close the loop browser. All right, if I resize this a bit, something very magical is happening here. In this section, I really want you to understand how the tracks are positioned within the tracks area, within the inspector, within the mixer. So think about this. When you create a track, not only is it going to show up in the tracks area, it's also going to be displayed in the left channel strip within the inspector. So this corresponds with the tracks area. Another great thing that happens is that the mixer will also display a channel strip. So now we can access, change settings, all within the tracks area, the left channel strip inspector, and the mixer channel strip. If I create a second track, in this case, I'll do a software instrument track just to make it very clear which is which. Let's look here. Track number 1, I have an audio track. It is in focus. It's highlighted. I also have the left channel strip that it too is focusing on this audio track. And within the mixer, the same track is being highlighted. If I shift my attention over to track number 2, I am going to click on that track now. Everything has shifted, right? Tracks area, now focusing on instrument number 1, but track number 2. Same goes here on the left-hand side. This is that same software instrument track. Okay. And then the mixer will also show you the same. So if I open up Alchemy, check this out. You see it here, and this corresponds to the left channel strip inspector, and that corresponds to the mixer as well. So this is contextual. If I go from track 1 to 2, you can see the channel strip inspector just keeps changing back and forth, and all of the various inspectors, the region inspector, the track inspector are also changing simply because we're changing from track to track, and so all the various parameters are going to be different. The last thing I want to show you here is really amazing. If I delete the software instrument track and we're back just to the most basic level here, audio, stereo out, and the level master. Bear in mind, I have selected the tracks mixer here, as you can see right here. So if your screen is not showing you the same information, please select this, and more on this later. So then now the channel strip that's in focus is reflected inside of the left channel strip inspector and in the mixer. So when we create one bus, I want you to see what happens. When I create a bus, one of 3 things happen. Number 1, you're creating a bus in the background. Number 2, you're sending that to this auxiliary track. And then number 3, there is an auxiliary track that is created. Now, bear in mind, we're not seeing this in the tracks area, right? It's nowhere to be found there. If you do want to see it so that it's all displayed on the same level, then you can just simply control click here and create track. And then now you can see that within the tracks area. I'll hit Command Z for now, but the idea is that we have a main track, and let's say I wanted to send that track. In this case, why don't we bring in a drum beat, and notice I'm dragging in a pattern into an audio track, so it will be burned to audio. Now it becomes an audio track. And so I'll send this track to this auxiliary. So I'll go ahead and hit create track. And I'm going to show you something, but it's just strictly for visual purposes. So when you send a bus, it's almost like you're sending a duplicate version of your track through another channel strip. Now let me delete this because again, this is just a visual demonstration. But really what's happening is you're creating a duplicate so you can process it in a different way. Now, why would you do this? Because now I have the original source sound and I can go ahead and process that with a secondary sound. Now, why is this necessary? Well, for interest, for dynamics. For example, here we have a drum part and it's just a single source sound. But if I run that through a reverb, now we have this sound playing. Additionally, we will be sending this to aux number 1, and now we will be hearing it being played back through some pretty intense reverb. Check it out. Now, bear in mind, we are still listening to this first example. It's still playing, except that it's being overwhelmed, being drowned out by the reverb. So if I just drop the level of the specific bus, in this case, bus 1, I'll drop the send level so that it's not as intense and it's more complementary. Let's check this out. So even with this little bit of reverb, which one do you think sounds smoother, cleaner, more interesting, perhaps more professional? Before or after? There is no right or wrong to that specific question, but the truth is that if you want to be subtle, this is a really great way of being able to add effects to a signal without necessarily drowning out the signal. This is a much longer conversation that we will discuss in time, but I just want to be clear you understand what's happening on the mixer level, on the track level, and on the inspector level as far as the left channel strip inspector goes. So go ahead and take the time to understand the tracks and how they all relate to one another. Of course, if I have, let's say, 5 different audio tracks and I have one selected, then that same relationship occurs. As I switch tracks, you can see that the mixer looks different and also the left channel strip inspector also looks different because it is reflecting the selection that I am making in Logic Pro. All right, team, get the work in, do what you got to do, and I will see you in the next video.